I mean, like, I've got no problem if people want to buy Bitcoin. I mean, I think it's a foolish thing to do. I think it's a digital pyramid scheme, a chain letter, blockchain letter. I think a lot of people are going to lose a lot of money, and I think it's bad for society that we're squandering this money. I overestimated, I guess, the intelligence of individuals, and now companies with respect to understanding Bitcoin. And, I had no idea that the bubble could get this big. I think what's really happened recently, you had two things. You had the introduction of the ETFs and Wall Street coming in and buying up Bitcoin. That pushed up the price. I mean, obviously, nobody is buying Bitcoin in an ETF because they want to use it for anything. No, they're not using it as a currency. They're just gambling on appreciation. And I think that kind of started to wear off. And then, of course, you have MicroStrategy, Michael Saylor, single-handedly. I think he's bought in the last month 11.5 billion more of Bitcoin, a lot of it with borrowed money, but the rest of the money he raises just by, selling shares of stock. So he's just been this crazed buyer that not only has pushed up the price, but has caused a lot of other people to buy it, to front run his buying, to try to, make money off of the buying. And now you have, Senator Loomis introduced this ridiculous bill to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve, which there's nothing strategic about Bitcoin, and we certainly don't need to have a reserve of it. But I think that the potential for this, and you had all these guys down at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville, RFK Jr. and Trump, paying homage to the Bitcoin crowd, really pandering to that community, promising them this Bitcoin reserve, which is really a payback for their donations and their support. But I think that the prospect of the U.S. government buying, 1 million Bitcoin, regardless of the price, just buying every single month and never selling. The Loomis bill says you can't sell that Bitcoin for 20 years. I mean, what kind of reserve is it if you can't use it? But with all this stuff happening, I mean, that's really what's pushed up the price of Bitcoin. But I still think it's a bubble. I still think it's not digital gold. I mean, Powell got that wrong today. He was asked about Bitcoin, and he said he doesn't see it as a competition to the dollar. He doesn't see it as a currency. He said it's just like gold, which it's nothing like gold. So he doesn't understand gold either. That's another thing Powell doesn't get. But I do think it's going to collapse. They like to compare Bitcoin to the internet, right? And the beginning of the internet. Well, Bitcoin came around in 2009, 2010. So, it's, what is it? 15 years it's been around. And, I know in the first 14 or 15 years of the internet, I noticed a very big difference in my daily life. I went from never using the internet to constantly using the internet. In fact, today I can't even be without the internet. I mean, everybody, I'm on my smartphone all the time. The internet is probably the most important thing in my life, as far as something that I use, something that adds value to what I do. In contrast, Bitcoin has been around for those 15 years, and it hasn't changed a thing. I mean, other than the fact that some people have gotten rich because they bought it a long time ago, and other than the fact that if I turn on CNBC, all I see is Bitcoin commercials and people talking about Bitcoin. As far as in the real world, it's done nothing. It's changed nothing. Blockchain has changed nothing. Crypto, nothing has changed because of Bitcoin. So, you have a cult, you have all these conferences and people go and talk about it. I was just over the weekend, I was in St. Bart for Thanksgiving. I come on the plane to come back, the little prop plane, and the pilot sees me, says, "Oh, when you going to buy Bitcoin?" The guy's mining Bitcoin in his spare time. He's, flying this plane for a living. He lives here in Puerto Rico. But I mean, apart from people trying to make money off of Bitcoin, it hasn't done anything. So I don't see the value. Michael Saylor, I see his interview, goes, it's the only asset in the history of the world that has limited supply. No, I mean, has he not noticed that there are hundreds, thousands of other cryptocurrencies? Many of them have supply caps exactly like Bitcoin. I mean, and there's an unlimited number of cryptos that somebody can create. You can create one, I can create one, and we can limit the supply to whatever we want. So the key is not limiting the supply. The key is the utility of the asset that you're limiting the supply of. Gold is the most useful metal in the world. So, there are more uses for gold than any other metal we have. it has properties that are very unique to gold and that are very special and that are very valuable to mankind because of the things that we can do with gold. But there's nothing unique or special about Bitcoin other than the fact, yes, there's a lot of people who believe in it now and who have built up all this computing power and this huge network around Bitcoin. But my belief is the main reason that all of this capital has been wasted and misdirected into Bitcoin is based on the belief that the price is always going to go up. And that's the whole basis of the MicroStrategy strategy of continuously buying higher and higher cost Bitcoin with more and more borrowed money, because it's never going to come down. Because if Bitcoin goes down, MicroStrategy is bankrupt. But, no one cares because Bitcoin can only go up. I mean, we finally invented an asset that has no downside risk and can only go up, right? I mean, where have I heard something crazy like that? So I don't see the real value there. I don't, I make payments all the time, very quickly, with my credit cards. I've used Zelle, I use PayPal, I use Venmo. We have all kinds of ways that I can send money instantly anywhere I want, very quickly, costs nothing. I don't see where I need Bitcoin to do any of that. Nobody uses Bitcoin for that. And so I don't see what value it actually brings. I mean, it's a sexy story that everybody tells to try to justify the price and getting people to buy it. But in fact, they've already admitted that it's not good as a medium of exchange. Nobody even pretends that anymore. But I don't think it's a danger to gold. In fact, if anything, it may ultimately help gold because of all the money wasted on Bitcoin. It contributes to inflation. It contributes to making an economy less competitive and less productive. If we waste all of our money on Bitcoin and figuring out how to trade Bitcoin and mine Bitcoin and whatever, those are resources that can't be invested productively to produce things that people actually need and they actually want. And so Bitcoin is probably good for gold. It's bad for the people who buy Bitcoin because they could have bought gold instead. Now, I know, yes, the people who bought Bitcoin years ago instead of gold have made a lot more money on paper. The problem is most people who bought Bitcoin are not selling any of their Bitcoin because they think it's going to keep going up indefinitely. And so they haven't actually realized any of those gains. The smart people are selling. They're the ones that bought, 10 years ago, at a much lower price. And yeah, they're cashing out. They're laughing all the way to the bank. But the hodl gang is going to be left holding the bag. I think the main reason that Donald Trump embraced crypto was to get the votes of the crypto community, especially young people who typically vote Democrat. Now they had a reason to vote Republican because the Republican candidate was promising to make them rich. And so he got a lot of votes, but he also got a lot of campaign donations that he needed from the crypto industry. And so what he's doing now is paying back those donors by promoting Bitcoin and talking positively about a Bitcoin reserve so that the people who donated to his campaign can cash in on that investment by selling Bitcoin into all this hype. Now, whether or not he actually follows through with a Bitcoin reserve, which really to me is an act of treason. I think it's a terrible thing to do to the country, to reward a handful of crypto buyers at the expense of the entire country by wasting money, by going into debt to buy nothing. So I really hope that Trump doesn't do this. I think that the Loomis bill is going nowhere. I don't think there's any support for that bill outside of maybe a handful of people in the House or the Senate. So I think the only way there's a Bitcoin reserve is if Trump does it on his own by some kind of executive order, if that's even constitutional. But I hope that doesn't happen. I've got no problem if people want to buy Bitcoin. I think it's a foolish thing to do. I think it's a digital pyramid scheme, a blockchain letter. I think a lot of people are going to lose a lot of money, and I think it's bad for society that we're squandering this money. But, it's a free country, supposedly. You're free to squander your money. And just because that's bad for the country, you could squander it. You earn it, do whatever you want with it, right? But where I draw the line is on the government squandering the public's money. If people want to buy Bitcoin, they're free to do it. The U.S. government should not be doing it because I pay taxes. Even though I'm in Puerto Rico, I still pay a lot of taxes every year to the U.S. government. I don't want my tax money used to buy Bitcoin. I don't want the government selling our gold. I'm an American citizen. So the U.S. gold reserves are there to protect me. I don't want my gold reserves sold to buy Bitcoin. And I'm sure there's a lot of other Americans that would share in that outlook. So that should not happen. The government should not use the power of the state, the coercive power of the state, to force citizens to buy Bitcoin if they don't want to buy it. And that's really what's happening because, they're running out of buyers to keep the scheme going. And so because they can't convince people to voluntarily buy it, they need to force people to buy it using the power of government, which is so ironic because Bitcoin is supposed to be anti-government. It's supposed to be a free market alternative to government. But now we're trying to get government to come in there to keep the thing going. We got Wall Street in first, and we kind of played that for all they could. They saturated these ETFs, and now they needed another layer of buying. And so they've got their hopes on the U.S. government.
Peter Schiff, a well-known economist and gold advocate, provides a sharp critique of Bitcoin in this commentary. He frames Bitcoin as a digital pyramid scheme whose bubble has grown beyond his expectations. According to Schiff, Bitcoin's recent price surge stems from two key developments: Wall Street's entry through ETFs and MicroStrategy CEO Michael Saylor's aggressive Bitcoin purchases totaling $11.5 billion, much of it with borrowed money. Schiff draws a compelling comparison between Bitcoin and the Internet's early years. While the Internet fundamentally transformed daily life within its first 15 years, Bitcoin, he argues, has failed to deliver any practical utility beyond speculation despite existing for a similar period. He dismisses the limited supply argument popularized by Saylor, noting that anyone can create cryptocurrencies with similar supply caps. Schiff expresses particular concern about Senator Lummis's proposed strategic Bitcoin reserve legislation, which he considers dangerous. He views the support from political figures like Trump and RFK Jr. as merely pandering to the crypto community in return for campaign donations rather than sound policymaking. In Schiff's view, while early Bitcoin investors might be selling their positions profitably, newer investors continue holding in the belief that prices can only rise. He strongly opposes government involvement in Bitcoin purchases, considering it an inappropriate use of taxpayer money and, ironically, contrary to Bitcoin's original anti-government philosophy. He suggests that this push for government buying reflects a desperate need for new buyers as market interest potentially wanes. While Schiff acknowledges people's freedom to invest in Bitcoin, despite his belief that it's foolish, he draws a hard line at government involvement, viewing it as potentially treasonous and harmful to the country's interests.